Hun, the phones are ringing. Would you get it for me, please? I'm a-trying to watch old Johnny. He just come on. What? Get it myself. Confound it, every time something like this comes up, it's always me, always me. I've got to be the one that answers the phone. Hello? Hello? Long distance? Yeah, this is me. Who's this? What? What do you mean, am I a Christian? I don't know. Who's a-calling? Did you say heaven? What? Well, hello, Lord. Sir, I've been a Christian a long time. Yes, sir, I sure have. And after all, sir, you hadn't heard from me in quite a while, so you just thought you'd better go ahead and call, huh? Well, Lord, I tell you, it was just last night, this same time last night, I was planning on talking to you. Yeah, it sure was. I was laying there watching that there old television, old Johnny Carson, you know, he was on the TV. I said to my wife, I said, hon, you know, as soon as old Johnny gets off the television, we ought to get on our knees and talk with the Lord. That's what we said. And I wish to goodness we'd have gone ahead and done it, but we didn't. But I tell you, Lord, what I'm going to do, I'm going to start doing better. I sure am. I'm going to say my prayers tonight, whether I need to or not. Yes, sir. Sir? Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I go to church. Yes, sir, every Sunday. I'm a faithful church member. Yes, sir. Sir? Did I go last Sunday? Yes, sir, I went last Sunday. I sure did. I went for morning preaching. Wonderful service. Sir? What did the preacher preach on? Well, you know how the preacher is, don't you? He preached on the platform. Sir? Well, I understand. Yeah. He talks mostly about the Bible, you know. Sir, the subject. Well, Lord, he referred to, and he talked about Matthew. No, I don't believe it was Matthew, Lord. I believe it was Mark. No, I don't. I think it was Jude. No, that was a couple of months ago. Now, let's see now. And I remember, sir, Sunday night. No, Lord, I didn't make it Sunday night, Lord. Sir, a bonanza. Yes, sir. Well, sir, you know, Lord, I would have gone. You know, I was planning on going, but I got to sitting around on Sunday afternoon thinking, you know, and I said to myself, you know, the next day's Monday, and sir, yes, sir, it's been that way a long time, I reckon. But you know, I got to thinking I need my rest, you know, and it's a cotton picking hard anymore, Lord, to go to church on Sunday all day and Sunday night, and then have to get up the next morning and hit the ball and stuff like that, and sir, Sunday before last. Well, Lord, you know, you just kind of picked on a couple of bad ones here, you know, and you're asking about the wrong ones, but, you know, I work so hard all the week, you know, and last Sunday before last was such a pretty day and all and everything, and I didn't go to church, Lord. No, I tell you, I went out and sir, oh, you know where I went, huh? Yes, sir. I caught 2 bass and 4 crappie. Yes, sir. What time did I get home that night? From fishing, you mean? Well, Lord, it was about 10:30 that night. Sir? Yes, sir, it's probably a lot later than it'd been if I'd gone on to church, Lord, but you see, fishing's different. It ain't different. Well, I couldn't have gone to church no way. My wife was a homesick, and somebody would have had to stay with her, Lord. Sir? Lord, yes, sir, Lord, I'm so glad you asked that question. Yes, sir, Lord, I'm a good steward. Yes, sir, I sure am. You talk about stewards and all. You mean tithing and giving to the church and all? Yes, sir, I give to the church. I sure do. I give to the church every Sunday. Sir? Yes, sir, every Sunday that I go. Sir? Oh, yes, we're growing in the church. We're growing by leaps and bounds. I tell you, it's just growing like crazy. And well, you know what? I'm a-growing with them. I gave $58 to the church last year. I sure did, and after all, sir, well, what do you mean you don't think I understand what stewardship means too good? Sir, 10% of everything that I own belongs to you. Well, yes, sir, Lord, I know about that, but I tell you, right now, you just kind of called it a bad time, you know. You just picked a bad time. We're in a recession down here, you know, and the thing's done turned into a depression for me, and I just can't give any more, Lord, than that right now. And sir, 10%. Well, I gave that that money, you see, last year, and after all, that's a little over $1 a week, you know. Sir, how much did I make? You're talking about money still? Well, it was a little over $10,000. That don't tally out too good, does it, Lord? Well, now, Lord, I know that, but you know, as I told you before, and as soon as I get my motor paid for, yeah, I just got the thing, you know, and do you know my wife? I thought you might. You know, Lord, she can just walk across the floor and fall on something, you know. And she did that broke her lower plate. Lord, there's things to fix on top of things around here, and we'll never see daylight again. But if I do, I'll start giving my tithe. I sure will. Sir, hey, yes, sir, 10%. Yeah, Lord, but if I don't pay off this boat and this motor, you know, they'll come and get it, and then I won't have one. Yeah. Sir, you think if I don't start paying my tithe, I ain't gonna need no boat and motor down there? Yes, sir, clear enough, completely clear. It sure was. Sir? Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir, I sure do. I'm so glad you asked that. I take an active part in everything. Everything that goes on in the church, Lord, I'm right in the middle. Well, you know what? Every time somebody comes by here telling me there's things going on in the church that shouldn't be, well, I'm the first one to jump all over our preacher. I tell him just exactly what I think. I sure do. I take an active part, Lord, in everything. Sir, that ain't the way you do it, huh? Well, no, Lord, I tell you, that's just the way most of them do it. Sir? Oh, this is a person-to-person call just to me, huh? Yes, sir, I'll do better. Lord, no, I tell you, Lord, I wish, I tell you how I feel about that. You know, I figure going to Sunday school is just for the kids. You know, I just don't see much in need for us grown folks going on to Sunday school, so I don't do that. Lord, I just love to stay home and watch the television ministers, you know. I just love that Kathleen Koonsman, you know, and Oral Rogers down at the college, and I am simply crazy over Tex Humboldt down in Akron. He's just wonderful, you know. But I tell you, Lord, as soon as they're all off, I mosey on over to preaching. I sure do. I like to go to morning worship. I sure do. Sir? Around my kids? Influence, you mean? Well, yes, sir. I'm a good Christian in front. Lord, never do we do anything in this here house or say anything that'd be wrong in front of our children. No, sir, not a word. I don't believe in it. Sir? What did I say when I got my thumb caught in the linen closet? You heard about that? Well, I was a-standing there, Lord, you know, and all of a sudden, this your door come out from nowhere, and my thumb was in the way, and it hurt so bad, and it was awful, and I said, well, well, Lord, never mind what I said, sir, the praise. Yes, sir, I give the praise. Yes, sir, I sure do. I was reading the Bible the other day. I picked it up, and it said in Thessalonians to give the Lord the praise. It sure did, but I tell you, Lord, it was just a little hard to find a place to give the praise when I got my thumb caught in the door. Yes, sir. No, sir. No, sir. I don't believe in it. No, sir. We don't gossip at all. Not a word. I think it's awful. Lord, I tell you, the things we say about our neighbors is all true. Yes, sir, every word of it. That's right. That's right. And when we tell them, you know, now that's to go no farther. You know, we don't want them running around the neighborhood talking about our neighbors, Lord, even if I ain't no good. That's all, just between us, you know, just to go no further. Don't tell nobody else. You already heard about that too, huh? Sir? Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I sure do. I love that preacher. He's a wonderful man. That's the preachingest dude I've ever seen. I love him. I sure do, sir. If he's such a wonderful preacher, then why don't I start doing more of what he says? Well, Lord, I thought I did pretty much all he says already. Sir, if I'm doing all he says, he must not say a whole lot, huh? Well, Lord, maybe you should have called him instead of me. Oh, well, that was just a thought anyway, Lord. Sir? Yes, sir. Now, I know that, Lord, and I know that. You're right. You sure are. This is one of the very few countries that we've got, Lord, that we can worship you without violating those man-made laws. Yes, sir, sir, yes, sir, I realize you must love us dearly in giving your son to die on the cross for us and all, and I do appreciate it. I sure do. This phone call's meant a lot to me. Sir? Oh, you got to go now? Well, now, Lord, I tell you, I appreciate you calling, but and since you reminded me and all, I'm going to start doing better. I think I need to. Sir? You think I need to, too, huh? Well, I am. I'm going to rededicate my life right now, Lord. I sure am. I'm going to quit talking about my old neighbors, Lord, even if they ain't no good. And I'm going to start tithing my tithes, my 10%, and paying my debts, Lord. And yes, sir, I'm going to go to church on Sunday, Sunday morning, yeah, and morning worship preaching. Every time, Lord, they have church, Lord, I'm going to be there and take an active part. Yes, sir, the right kind. And I ain't taking nobody's word no more for what's going on in the church that shouldn't be. I'm going to be there, Lord, and find out what's going on for myself. Yes, sir, I sure, sir. Yes, sir, and pray for others just like they've been praying for me. Yes, sir, Lord. And now, Lord, now you know how dependable that I am. Yes, sir, and you can depend on me for doing that. Oh, okay, Lord, and I thank you. I thank you so much for calling. Here, goodbye now, sir. Goodness alive, I never. Hello, hello. Who's this? Well, this is the operator. Hon, you're just who I wanted to talk to. You know, I just got this cheer telephone call on this line. I want you to check on your papers there, hon, and look for me for something. And I want you to see if this was a collect call. Hold up. Yes, ma'am. Well, I thank you so much for looking, and it wasn't. It wasn't. Okay. You have a good day, okay? Goodbye now. Whew. Boy, I've heard about the books before, but I sure didn't know he put all that stuff in it. What's that, dear? Who was it on the telephone? Never mind. You wouldn't believe me if I told you who it was. Never mind. I'm not even sure you know the feller. But I tell you one thing. The next time the phone rings, you can answer it, for you needed that a whole lot worse than what I did. What? Was it the wrong number? No, it wasn't the wrong number. Believe me, the man had my number. In fact, I think he's probably got a lot of people's number. Well, we went to visit Papu and Granny Huey and J.T., and I remember that they was having a revival meeting. And back them their days, they had them under what you call brush arbors, you know. And we rode to the church in Papu's old Red Nash, which is about 4 miles from where Papu lived. And as the meeting was over, they asked this old gentleman who had been in the community for many, many years, old Uncle Jacob Lovall, to dismiss the meeting. Now, Uncle Jacob began to pray, and people began to shout, and folks began to pray all over that building. And the meeting just broke in a new place, you know. Well, and the thing lasted for another hour. Well, now when it's finally over, we started home, bouncing along in Papu's old Red Nash. And Papu he's riding along, you know, just sitting there kind of thinking. And he began to talk. He said, you know, I've known old Jacob for 30-odd years now, and Jacob's a good man. He really is. He's a good Christian man, and he's raised a fine family. And it's always been a pleasure for me to know Jacob Lovall. But I'll tell you one thing about the feller. He sure ain't no hand to dismiss. Now, I've got another uncle. Now, his name is Riley Edsel Huey. Now Edsel is JT's brother, you know. Now, Edsel lives down in Ropesville, Texas, and that's where I was born. That's where our farm was. And Uncle Edsel, the poor guy, he could never say yes or no to a question, you know. Uncle Edsel's answer was always, that just kind of depends. Now, late one evening, about dark, the telephone rang. And Uncle Edsel went to the phone, and there was this feller on the other end that said, Edsel, I'd like to know what you'd take for that old black bull that's down in your pasture. And Edsel, not being able to answer yes or no, said, well, now that just kind of depends. Just gave his old answer, you know. And the man at the other end of the telephone said, well, now it depends on what? And Uncle Edsel said, well, then the price of my bull depends on whether or not your Internal Revenue Service or my bull has done been hit by a train. Now, I want to tell you a story about my Uncle J.T. Now, Uncle J.T. lives in East Texas in a little town called Blossom. But now, J.T. had these here hogs. And this was my first encounter with the Arkansas-type razorback hogs. Now, back in them days, the J.T. and them, they didn't keep their hogs up. They just let them run out, you know, down in the river bottom. And they fared pretty well, eating acorns and switch cane and all. And while we was a-visiting there, it seemed like they was having an awful lot of trouble with their hogs a-dying. So, now my daddy, Clarence, is a big West Texas farmer. And Papa and J.T. always recognized Clarence as being that and liked for his advice, you know. And I remember J.T. saying, now, Clarence, we're having an awful trouble with our hogs a-dying. What do you think we could do? And Daddy, knowing government men and all, he said, we ought to call one of them there government men out of Paris to come out here and look at your hogs. And the man came, you know. He came from Paris, and he did. He spent about 3 days down in the river bottom observing them there hogs, crawling down in the mud and trying to watch them and all to see what kind of problem it was, you know. And, I'll tell you, I thought maybe that Uncle J.T. knew just about as much as he did. I didn't know. But after 3 days, he called a meeting of all the farmers in the county, not just our family, but all of them, and began to explain to them what he thought was happening to the hogs. Now, this being one of the wet years, and the hogs are running out down in the river bottom, their old long tails is dragging in the mud. And they've been dragging them for so long, it's caused mud balls to start building up on the ends of their tails. Now these balls of mud would get bigger and bigger and bigger, you know, and he found some hogs that had mud balls on the end of their tails that were dragging, you know, they were dragging mud balls as big as basketballs, you know. So this dear government man, his conclusion was this. He said, now these here hogs have been walking down in this river bottom for so long in this mud, and these balls of mud have built up so big that it stretched their skins so tight that they couldn't close their eyes, and then they've all died from lack of sleep. Now, my wife's name is Marilyn, and I'd like to tell you something about her. Now, Marilyn Ruth's a real pretty girl, and smart. Now, she's no mental giant, of course, you know, but the big problem with her is her money. Now, it seems like every month when we get home, I get a call from the banker, Mr. Holmes, down in Brownfield. And Mr. Holmes says, now, Jerry, your wife's overdrawn again down at the bank. Now, this is embarrassing for me. You know, I have to go down every month and explain to my banker, you know. So I had a talk with Marilyn Ruth, and I told her it was a very simple thing. It was just a matter of adding and subtracting. That she put her money in the bank at the first of the month and start writing checks, you know, deducting each one, and when the balance got down to zero, I mean, just quit writing checks. That didn't seem too difficult, you know. So, at the end of the month, the very same thing happened again. Mr. Holmes called and said, now, Jerry, your wife's overdrawn again. Would you want to come down? So I did, but you know, I'm a patient man, you know, and I went in to talk to Marilyn. And I told her I felt sure she'd understand, you know. I said, now, Marilyn, you know I'm not a violent man. But I explained to her that the next time that this thing happened, I was going to knock the thunder out of her. And sure enough, And it's just as sure as day, the end of the month came again and Mr. Holmes called once again. She was overdrawn in her account. And being a man of my word, I did just exactly what I said I was going to do. And you know, I didn't see that woman for 5 days. And then I caught just a glimpse of her out of my left eye where the swelling had started going down. Now, I want to tell you a story about a friend of mine, Clem Caldwell. Now, Clem has this problem of stuttering, and sometimes it's kind of funny. And Clem even laughs at himself sometimes. But one day, Clem was downtown Lubbock, standing in the lobby of this 20-story building looking at a directory. And this fella running the elevator walked over to him and asked him if he could be of assistance to him and maybe finding one of the offices located in the building. And Clem told him that, yes, he was looking for the radio station. And he said, well, it's on the top floor. Let me just take you on up there. So on the ride up, he felt like he ought to say something, you know. So he asked Clem, he said, are you visiting the radio station and just going to look it over or what? And Clem said, no, I'm going to apply for a job as a radio announcer. So the elevator operator let him off at the top floor, and in about 20 minutes, Clem was back down already. And there was nothing but silence for the first 10 floors, you know, and finally the elevator operator just casually said, Clem, did you get the job? And Clem said, no, sir, those folks up there prejudiced against Jews. Well, as I told you a little while ago about my Uncle Edsel and Uncle J.T., and all my uncles, you know, well, these are my mama's brother. Well, now she has one more brother, and his name's Bob. Now, I'm going to tell you something about him. Now, I remember a long time ago when refrigerated air conditioning first came out in the cars. I think it was about 1950 or 52, somewhere along there, you know. And now this happened down in East Texas, you know. Uncle Bob, about 14, 15 years old, had just taken a trailer of cotton down to the gin for Papu, his daddy. Now, this was a hot September day, and Bob was hitchhiking back to the farm from the gin where he delivered the trailer of cotton. Well, cars were just a-passing him right and left, and he was hot and sweaty and thirsty, and sure was a-wanting to ride real bad. When down the road came the longest and the newest and the blackest Cadillac Bob had done ever seen. And sure enough, it began to look like the guy was going to pull over for him. Well, Bob, being hot and sweaty and dirty and all, he thought to himself, I'll bet this guy won't give me no ride in that big car, you know. And after all, he sees how dirty I am. But the fella pulled over the shoulder and rolled down his electric window on the passenger side and hollered out to old Bob, boy, do you need a ride? And Bob said, yes, sir, I sure do, and I sure would appreciate it. Well, the man in the big car said, well, just hop in, and as it turns out, the old boy driving the car was a traveling salesman out of Dallas. And just trying to make conversation, the salesman says, what do your folks do, son? And Bob said, well, we're just cotton farmers, and we raise a little grain and a few hogs, you know. We're just farm folks and all. And by this time, they had gone about 10 miles. And Bob was beginning to shake and shiver just a little bit from the air conditioner that was in the car. You know, the salesman was dressed up in a blue serge suit and a coat and tie and everything, and he had the refrigerated air conditioner set at 65 degrees. Well, as they rode on down the highway toward the farm, the salesman said, young man, what kind of chores is your family doing on the farm today? And by this time, Uncle Bob, just a boy, you know, had both hands between his legs just to keep warm. And Bob thought just a minute and looked outside. You know, it was about 104 degrees outside, just as clear as a bell, not a cloud in the sky. And then he looked at the salesman and looked at the vent, which was on the dash, which the cold air was coming from, you know, and said, well, when I left the house this morning, we was a-picking cotton. But since this norther has blowed in, I guess we'll just kill hogs. Now, I travel all over the country telling folks all kinds of stories. I talk to all kinds of people in all walks of life. But the greatest story I could ever tell is that about my Savior, Jesus the Christ. We are going to sing the greatest story of all now. Folks, would you welcome the Jordans?